So the story goes a little something like this. Film photography used to be the only photography, right? There was no alternative. That was until digital photography came along and messed everything up for everybody. I'm kidding. There's lots of good advantages to shooting digital, but it caused the price of film and film cameras and film photography accessories to plummet, which was all really nice and really convenient about 10 to 15 years ago when film photography decided it was going to have itself a moment. And ever since then, film photography has been on a raging comeback, right? Vibes and tones everywhere. Everybody's super excited. And that's where you get YouTube channels like mine and all these other wonderful folks out there making videos about film photography. It's on a comeback. It's great. But at least today, I think we're finally starting to see that we may be at the top of the bell curve, right? Things may be about to go in the other direction. It feels like stuff's slowing down. And I'm going to tell you why. You're probably looking for some big, profound answer. It's money. So in today's video, we're going to talk about why I feel like film photography's recent comeback may be about to stall out. Also, we're going to talk about whether it's still a good idea to even shoot film in the first place. Just going to bnhphoto.com to take a look at some prices here. Portra 400, 5 rolls of Portra 400, the value pack, as it may have once been called, is $84, right? That's 18 bucks a roll. Portra 800 on B&H Photo's website, $19.95 a roll. Ektar 100, $14.99 a roll. Even HP 5, $10.99 a roll. And then Ektachrome E100, $21.99. So shooting film was all fun and games when stuff was $3, $4, $5, $6 a roll. But these days we're getting, as near as makes no difference, $1 a shot in some instances. So shooting film is really, really expensive. So why on earth would someone want to shoot film? Excluding masochism, self-loathing, or some sort of weird financial abuse kink, why would you want to shoot a film camera that's older than your grandfather? Well, it turns out there are some really good, valid reasons to want to shoot film. Many of the reasons why I still shoot a lot of film. Learning photography. The most commonly cited reason for folks wanting to shoot film photography in the first place is because they want to actually learn how to use a camera. Most of the cameras that we shoot today, the Sony a7R III that I'm recording this video on right now, they've got all these automatic function modes, right? They basically run themselves. You set them and forget them, and everything is super easy. So while some folks may want to know a little bit more about what's going on, hang tight. I have a Fed 2 camera right here, and the cool thing about the Fed 2 is it looks like a Leica, right? It's got a wonderful old vintage aesthetic design. What also makes this thing really interesting is it has no automatic functionality at all. In fact, there's not even a place to put a battery, right? So the camera functions without a battery, but you have to know what you're doing to be able to operate the camera. What sort of ISO is the film you're shooting? You have to be able to input that. You have to manually focus the camera. You have to set the aperture on the lens barrel, and you have to select the shutter speed. Right, so you have to know how the camera works to be able to operate it. And that is really good for figuring out how to work a camera, how photography works, and will let you make better photographs when you eventually move back to your digital camera and you can shift into manual mode and actually accomplish some of the interesting things you want to. One of the single biggest advantages to shooting film photography is that with these old cameras, there isn't a lot of automatic functionality, and you will, by necessity, learn how to work a camera. So that's pretty cool. It's one of the main reasons people shoot film to begin with. There's also something to be said for being limited in some sense. I throw a roll of HP 5 into my Fed 2, which is what I've got in there right now. You're locked in for 36 exposures to shooting, 400 speed black and white film. So you're limited to what film stock you've put in the camera, and that forces you to be creative. It forces you to think about what you're doing, taking your automatic digital camera out there with your variable zoom lens that you could shoot any focal length, 28 to 300, whatever, where you can shoot anything. This camera has a 50 millimeter prime lens on it. It has 400 speed black and white film on it. It kind of defines what its use is based on the decisions that you've made by using this setup to begin with. Having some limitations a lot of times forces creativity too. So that's another really cool thing. Film cameras can oftentimes limit you in some ways, which can also lead to more creativity. One of the most important draws to film photography, it's one of the things I like about it the most too, is just nostalgia. I'm 36 years old, almost 37 at this point. I I grew up with my parents using film cameras. I'm relatively young in this space. Weird to call myself young, but lots of folks look back at a time when we shot film cameras very nostalgically. So there is some nostalgia to shooting old cameras like this. I mean, just look at the camera. It's a beautiful old camera. Everything's made of metal. Modern digital cameras are certainly not built as well as this thing, and there's something really cool about that. Another really awesome thing is there's tons of cameras out there. You know, I've pointed out a number of times, this is a Fed 2. This is one of, I don't know, a million film cameras out there to choose from. No matter what your use case is, no matter what your experience is, there is going to be a film camera out there that will satisfy exactly what you want to do with it. Unlike digital cameras, they kind of have a general form factor and look. There are so many different kinds of film cameras out there. You can accomplish almost any goal. You can accomplish almost any goal when you're looking for a film camera. Whether you want a film camera that's tucked inside of a watch, inside of a beer can, something that looks like a classic Leica design, a TLR that I've got up on the shelf back there, to a big boxy 4x5 or 8x10 large format camera. There are just so many form factors out there, so many options to choose from. You're going to be able to find something that suits you. And because they've been making these things for, I don't know, well over 100 years, there are going to be options at reasonable price points as long as you stay away from the big, you know, major, I don't know, YouTube influencer popularized cameras. The Leica M6, the Mamiya 7 II, all these different, those cameras are all really expensive, but if you get out of the kind of the mainstream cameras, those choices, you're going to find awesome deals out there. Probably the thing that I like about film photography the most, though, is there's no post-processing involved. There's something really cool to be said, taking your camera out, shooting a full roll of film, and coming back and just knowing that that film is pretty well completed, right? You don't have to come back and think about how you're going to color these images, what you're going to make them look like. Most of that's already baked in, right? Of course, you can do some minor tweaks in post-processing, but the look of film is special in and of itself, and lots of times, you know, the film stock that you chose is actually the preset that you would eventually put on them in Lightroom at the end of the day. So not a lot of post-processing involved with film photography. That's wonderful. So for all those reasons, I think shooting film is still a really great idea. It's something you should absolutely consider if you haven't already. But what are some of the reasons why you may not want to shoot film? Obviously, it's easy to sit here and point out all the wonderful pros of shooting film, but there's also some real downsides, and I think it's important that we talk about those too. That way you're making a good decision. So one reason to not get into film photography is if you're looking for image quality. Absent 4x5 or 8x10 large format, almost any time that you've converted your 35mm or 120 negative into a digital scan, it's gonna look worse than what a $400 digital camera would have produced. In fact, it may not even look as good in terms of just pure image quality as what you're going to get from your iPhone. Right? The resolution on our cameras these days are so high, and we won't dig too deep into this at this point, but your digital camera from your iPhone is shooting the image directly, right? There's no scanning involved. And when you shoot film, your output most of the time is a digital file as well. But you didn't take that image digitally, you took it analog. You burned some film. You stuck a roll of film in your camera and you captured some photons on a piece of plastic. Well, somebody had to take a picture of that negative and convert that to a digital image, and there's just a loss of image quality there. So if you're looking for just raw image quality, sharpness, dynamic range, all those things, lots of times 35mm film, 120 film are just not going to be all that impressive, especially when compared to modern digital camera sensors. My Sony a7 III absolutely destroys my Leica M6. The other fallacy is that you might get into film photography to save money. I've just not found that to be the case. You know, things have gotten so expensive these days. From the price of film to the price of cameras going up, the price of lenses, even the cost of development these days is just out of control. You're going to end up, let's say that you want to go shoot a roll of film, you can basically count on spending $30 to $40 soup to nuts getting that roll of film shot. There are only so many rolls of film that you're going to be able to shoot in a year because the prices are just so darn high. So that's something to consider. You know, we started the video discussing money and how the prices of things have increased over the past 10 to 15 years. And unfortunately, I don't see that trend getting any better. Film is a very niche hobby at this point. They're having to price things accordingly. The other thing that may be be surprising to a lot of folks is especially if you're interested in shooting retro vintage cameras like the Fed 2 or the Leica M6, those kinds of cameras, it's super slow. Shooting film most of the time is super slow. Of course, there's the Nikon F6 and there's the Nikon F100 and there's any number of Canon EOS cameras, there's modern Contax cameras. There are absolutely film cameras out there with modern functionality that are going to make things work very quickly, very smooth. But most of these old vintage cameras, like the ones you see on my shelf, the cameras that most folks are going to be interested in shooting to begin with when they get into film photography, all those are slow mother friggers. You decide to take a picture of the lawnmower. I say that because I'm in my garage looking at my lawnmower. And you're going to have to find the focus, and you're going to have to make sure that you got the right shutter speed, right? And you're going to want to double check again to make sure that you've got this thing exactly focused on the right plane. You have to pick your f-stop, right? And of course you can get quicker the more that you do it, and you get in situations where maybe your settings don't change as much and things move a little more quickly. But at the end of the day, this is a much slower process. When I get this camera back from a day of shooting, I'm left with a little film canister, right? There are no images to be seen anywhere, right? You have to send the film off, or you have to go through the process of developing the images at home yourself. It's a little bit of a process to get actual images, actual deliverable images in hand. So the whole process is just a lot slower than the modern digital workflow, and that's worth knowing. I'm just a really busy guy. I know a lot of you folks are as well. When we have very limited time for our hobbies to begin with, it's important to think about what the practical limitations of the system that we're shooting. Sometimes, I'll confess, it's just easier to go to your kid's softball game and take your Sony, right? Get the images back in the afternoon. So at this point, you're thinking about giving film photography a try. I think that is something you should absolutely consider doing, with the caveats that we've put out. If you're interested in learning to shoot film, you're not all that hung up on image quality, you're attracted to these old vintage camera designs, and you're willing to slow down. Hell, maybe you want to slow down, right? This could be your break from the hustle and bustle of normal life. You want a process that's going to get you out of your phone, get you away from screens, and get you back into the real world. I think those are all the good, important, valid reasons to consider shooting film. But if you're just wanting to go out there and get good images, and you are concerned about shooting rather quickly, this is not for you. If you're concerned about ultimate image quality, sharpness and resolution and dynamic range and all those things, film photography is not for you. And it's also worth saying the practical financial constraints. If you can't part with $30, $40, $50 a week, or I don't know, a couple times a month to shoot film photography, if money is really, really important to you, you probably want to stay away from film photography, at least at this juncture, because things are so darn expensive. So let me know in the comments, are you guys still shooting film? Still thinking about shooting film? Either way, let me know. If you are thinking about shooting film, take a look at this video that I made with 100 cameras that you can get for darn near makes no difference, $100. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.